As if the book publishing industry wasn't already in enough tumult as it is, conversations about AI and ChatGPT and how this technology might affect the future of book publishing have thrown the industry another curveball. So today I want to talk about how the book publishing industry, which is notoriously very reluctant to change and very slow to adapt to new technology, may be impacted by the rise of AI and ChatGPT. Are these technologies going to blow up the industry as we know it? Or will things continue to chug along more or less the way that they have for hundreds of years since publishers were created? This video is the second in my two-part series on AI and ChatGPT and how it is affecting book writing and publishing. So if you missed the first installment on if AI is the end of creative writing, definitely go and check that one out after this. Today, I am going to focus specifically on traditional book publishing via a major publishing house, just because that is the world I am most familiar with as a former literary agent, employee, and an employee at Penguin Random House. If you are at all interested in the book publishing industry, I recommend subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. Every week, I either provide insights into the industry like today's video, or I talk about tips for strengthening your story or your craft as a writer overall. So I'd love to have you around for all of that. If you do have a current work in progress, I have a free resource for my YouTube viewers in the description below. It is called my Story Self-Assessment Worksheet, and it is a simple, fun quiz designed to help you see your story in a new light and pull out the strengths and weaknesses in your own work. Downloading that is going to sign you up for my newsletter, where I publish exclusive interviews with publishing industry professionals and published authors, so you don't want to miss out on all of those amazing tips. And you can go straight to the newsletter if you'd like via the link in the description below. So the first major point I'm seeing in conversations about book publishing and AI is that agents and publishers truly do not want AI-generated books, at least at this time. As conversations about the capabilities of ChatGPT and AI are heating up across all industries, the commentary among book publishing professionals has pretty much been uniformly skeptical and reluctant. Across the board, from anyone who's in a curatorial or editorial role, such as editors at literary magazines or literary agents, or publishers at Big Five houses, are expressing their disinterest in stories or books that are generated from AI. Agent Kate McKean, who has a newsletter called Agents and Books, even did an entire installment dedicated to discouraging writers from using ChatGPT either to generate their queries or their books entirely. And I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing agencies and publishing houses stipulate that they are not interested in considering any material generated by AI. Now, why is this the case? Especially as AI grows more sophisticated and creates coherent and grammatically correct stories. At this point, I think it's pretty clear that the content generated by AI is not up to par, especially from a creative and artistic standpoint, as a human-generated story. The content generated by AI is pretty formulaic in its construction, and while it might create something that looks pretty decent and solid on the surface, the more you drill into it, you might realize that it is actually lacking the depth and the nuance that a human writer brings to their work, which is very, very important when we're talking about publishing stories that are supposed to resonate with an audience. Often it's not really saying much at all, and it's certainly not expressing itself in the prose as artistically as a human writer would. Now, of course, as AI develops, the capabilities of chatbots are going to become more and more sophisticated, right? And I do think the publishing industry is going to have to figure out how to address that when the time comes. For instance, will it allow books that are AI assisted, perhaps? I do think we need to see publishers take a stance on this pretty soon. And I would be surprised if decades down the line, we see them continue to wholly reject AI. But for now, at least until the capabilities become more sophisticated from an artistic perspective, we are seeing publishers and agents generally veer away from AI and ChatGPT generated content. That brings me to my next point, which is that even if publishers are not interested in AI generated books, they are experimenting with other use cases for AI. There are a lot of processes and nuts and bolts that go into creating a book, and there are potential use cases for streamlining the book publishing process, which is still quite manual and quite convoluted as it is. For example, audiobooks are a huge slice of industry profits and a major way that readers are trying to engage with stories. But there is a lot of labor and cost that goes into producing an audiobook, which is why not every single book that gets published ultimately gets made into an audiobook. So technologies that are able to generate human-sounding AI voices can help more books get audio editions, thus boosting sales and revenue for publishers via audiobooks as a format. In a similar vein, it could also help streamline the translation process of stories so that books that publishers create can get published in more and more markets. ChatGPT has shown to be incredibly useful for things like marketing copy and metadata and SEO, for instance. So all of the advertising and marketing collateral that goes into a book could definitely be streamlined as well. There's even talks in the industry about figuring out how AI could potentially personalize the reading experience of a particular book for a particular reader, which would be really interesting. And I saw a tweet from publishing expert Jane Friedman the other day that I thought was really cool. She mentioned that ChatGPT was really helpful for generating comparable titles, which are very difficult often for querying authors to come up with. So this could be another aspect that is very fruitful. One note though with comparable titles is that AI can generate titles and authors that are false. It can just spit out completely incorrect information. So whatever it gives you, you definitely want to double check and make sure that that book actually exists and is actually a good comp for you. If you're in the process of trying to figure out your comparable titles, I have a whole other video that goes into that, so I will include that link in the description. The last point I'm seeing discussed among publishing industry professionals regarding AI and ChatGPT is that copyright and bias issues need to be addressed before they can really embrace this technology in any capacity. Naturally, publishers are highly concerned with plagiarism, copyright infringement, and intellectual property issues. So that's a really big barrier in the conversation about AI currently, because AI generated content can inadvertently incorporate material from whatever data source it is using, or take an idea from another story entirely. This could lead to really tricky legal problems or accusations of content being plagiarized. There's also concern that AI could generate books in a certain author's style, and then that could lead to a bunch of knockoffs flooding the market that are of low quality and potentially devaluing the actual author's work. Think about what could happen if anyone could write the next installment of Lord of the Rings, for example, and there's just a ton of Lord of the Rings derivative content available. So this aspect of AI generated content definitely needs to be figured out, particularly if we're ever looking at a future in which AI assisted or AI generated books are to be consumed by a general readership. And lastly, publishing is already grappling with a huge diversity and inclusion issue in that it is trying to bring more diverse representation to books that get published, especially by major publishing houses. But ultimately, AI is only as unbiased as the data that it is trained on. And knowing the state of the world as it is likely that most of that data is biased in one way or another. So there's definitely concern that AI generated books could perpetuate stereotypes, prejudices, and biases that currently exist in the literature landscape. So we're going to need to figure out a way to make AI not perpetuate problematic content. So clearly there is a lot for publishers to work out regarding AI and ChatGPT, but I hope this gave you an idea of what the current feelings are toward these technologies and the current state of the publishing industry. Of course, this situation is constantly evolving and will only continue to, so I'll be very curious to see how it all plays out. Let me know in the comments what you think the future of book publishing could look like with AI and ChatGPT. If there's any points I didn't talk about, please drop them in the comments here. I'd love to hear what you guys are all thinking about. And if you missed it, make sure you go back to the first video in my AI ChatGPT series where I talk about if AI is the end of creative writing. If you enjoyed this video, it would mean a lot to me if you hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And don't forget your free story self-assessment worksheet and my newsletter link in the description below. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.